Thank you, IT. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening and welcome to the Councillors' meeting on Tuesday, the 20th of April 2021. My name is Councillor Bill Lewis, Mayor of Rugby, and I am the chairman of this meeting. The meeting is being web streamed to the public and is being attended by members through Microsoft Teams. Before we begin working through the agenda, I will go through some rules on procedure. The web streaming of this meeting is being monitored by IT services. If at any point there are any streaming issues, then I will be informed and the meeting will be adjourned until such time that the technological issues can be resolved. If during the course of the meeting any member is having connection issues, then there will be a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes to determine whether the connection issues can be resolved. If following the adjournment the connection issues cannot be resolved, then providing the meeting remains quorate, it will continue. It will be deemed that the member with connection issues has left the meeting and will no longer be able to participate. If a member wishes to leave the meeting for any other reason, they should indicate they wish to speak and inform the chairman when they are ready or given to leave to do so. For all attendees, if you have not already done so, please would you switch off your microphones and cameras now. For members, your microphones and cameras should be switched off unless you have been given leave to speak. If you wish to speak during the meeting, please use the raise hand function and wait for me to ask you to speak. The voting during virtual meetings will use the raise hand function. The Democratic Services Officer will confirm the vote. Are there any questions before we move into the formal agenda? Thank you. I will now ask our Democratic Services Officer to confirm the attendees at this meeting. This will be for council members only. When your name is called out, please confirm your attendance verbally by saying present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Mrs. Barrow.
Present.
Councillor Byrne.
Present.
Councillor Brader.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Bragg.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Brown.
Present.
Councillor Kieran Brown.
Present.
Councillor Butlin.
Present.
Councillor Cade.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Crane.
Present.
Councillor Cranham.
Present.
Councillor Douglas.
Present.
Councillor Miss Dumbleton.
Present.
Councillor Eccleston.
Present.
Councillor Ellis.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Garcia.
Present.
Councillor Gilias.
Present.
Councillor Lee Hunt. Councillor Keeling.
Present.
Councillor Miss Lawrence.
Present.
Councillor Lewis.
Present.
Councillor Lowe.
Present.
Councillor Mahoney.
Present.
Councillor Mistry.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. New.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. O'Rourke.
Present.
Councillor Pacey Day. Councillor Mrs. Parker.
Present.
Councillor Picker.
Present.
Councillor Ms. Robbins.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Roberts.
Present.
Councillor Howard Roberts.
Present.
Councillor Jerry Roodhouse.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Roodhouse.
Present.
Councillor Sanderson.
Present.
Councillor Shearer. I can see Councillor Shearer's on the present list, so I'll come back to Councillor Shearer shortly. Councillor Mrs. Simpson Vince.
Present.
Councillor Srivastava.
Present.
And Councillor Mrs. Timms.
Present.
Councillor Shearer, could you just confirm you're actually within the meeting, please? I think Councillor Shearer may possibly be having problems unmuting himself, Mr. Mayor.
Right, so we take him as being present then.
Yes, he's listed in the list of attendees.
Right. I make that 35, is that correct?
So we've got Councillor Mrs. Alanak, who's not here, Councillor Lee Hunt, Councillor McQueen, Councillor Pacey Day, Councillor Poole. So that's 5 absent. So I make that 36, Mr. Mayor, because we have
36.
40. Yeah.
Okay. I probably didn't count myself. Thank you. In that case, we'll now move into the formal agenda. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Are there any apologies, Executive Director?
Mr. Mayor, I have apologies from Councillor Mrs. Alanak, Councillor McQueen and Councillor Poole.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Lowe has his hand raised.
Yes, Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've also received a late apology from Councillor Pacey Day.
Thank you very much. Are there any other apologies? Okay, we'll move forward. The next item on the agenda is item 2, to approve the minutes of the meeting of council held on the 16th of March 2021. I move that the minutes of the meeting of council held on the 16th of March 2021 be approved and adopted. Who will second the motion?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Those in favour, please show using the raise hand function. Those against, please show, sorry, those in favour, please show using the raise hand function.
That's unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thank you. In that case, the motion is carried. Item 3, declaration of interest. Can I remind members that when they declare interest, sorry, I didn't ask you to lower your hands again before we start the next item. So can I remind members that when they declare interest, they must also declare the general nature of that interest. Are there any declarations under a non-pecuniary interest as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors? I can't see any raised hands. So item B, any declarations under pecuniary interest as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors?
There are no hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Declarations under item C, notice under section 106 Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax.
No hands are raised, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Claire. In that case, we'll move on to item 4, which is the Mayor's announcements. Now, this is the first council meeting since the announcement of the passing of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, on the 9th of April. A letter has been sent on behalf of the Borough to Her Majesty the Queen, expressing our deepest condolences both to her and her family. Although the national period of mourning has now ended, our thoughts remain with Her Majesty and the royal family at this difficult time. On Saturday the 10th of April, I laid a wreath in Caldecott Park on behalf of the citizens of the Borough of Rugby, with a message expressing the Council's deepest condolences. I thank others who have laid flowers there and those who have viewed and commented on the social media report describing the occasion. On Sunday the 18th of April, a service of thanksgiving for the life of His late Royal Highness was held at St Andrews, with the Rector, the Reverend Canon Edmund Newey, presiding over the live-streamed service. Due to COVID restrictions, attendance was by invitation only. I and the Mayor attended, together with the Mayor's Cadet and representatives of the Mayor's charities. Also there was our local MP, Rugby Borough Council's Executive Director, the political group leaders or deputy leaders, and a number of persons representing other notable local organisations. Most people found it quite a moving occasion. Members have been informed also of the sad news that Freeman of the Borough and former councillor Sidney Needham passed away earlier this month. Sid was conferred with the honour of Freeman in 1992 and was a councillor from 1967 to 1996, representing Brownsville Ward from 1967 to 1970, and then Caldecott Ward for the remainder of the terms of office. I have sent a letter on behalf of the Borough of Rugby to Sid Needham's family, expressing our sympathy and our great sadness at his passing. I would ask all members and officers present to join me in a moment's silence in memory of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, and in memory of the Freeman of the Borough, Sid Needham. Thank you. My announcements wouldn't be complete these days without a COVID update. And what I've got is following. The last month has seen some much needed positive news about the COVID-19 pandemic. Case numbers, which for some time had been much higher than the national average, have now reduced. More than 50,000 adults from our borough have had a first vaccination dose, and plans are developing on how we will deliver the next stage of the vaccine programme. Last week saw the reopening of shops and outdoor hospitality, encouraging our community wardens and commercial regulation teams report that the town centre has been well supported and that businesses are operating safely. I'm sure that all of us will want to thank our pubs, restaurants and shops for taking their responsibility seriously and to wish them every success as the lockdown continues to ease. On the other hand, we'd also, I'm sure, want to remember all those people, families and individuals who have lost loved ones due to the COVID epidemic. Thank you. We'll move on to item 5 of the agenda, the questions pursuant to Standing Order 10. Are there any questions, Executive Director?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Eccleston has his hand raised currently.
Yes, Councillor Eccleston.
Sorry, my apologies, Mr. Mayor. I didn't mean to raise it.
Okay, thank you.
In answer to your question, Mr. Mayor, we have 3 questions this evening, and the question and answers will be shared in turn on the screen shortly. Thanks.
Thank you.
We have the first question on the screen now, Mr. Mayor, from Councillor Sanderson to the leader.
Thank you. Do you wish to put your question verbally, Councillor Sanderson, or can we leave it that people will read the?
Mr. Mayor, we can ask Councillor Sanderson if he has any supplementary questions.
Yes, Councillor Sanderson, do you have any supplementary questions?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was on mute. Do you want me to read it out, or do you want to read it out?
No, that's fine if you're happy to leave it at the printed version.
Thank you.
Have supplementary question, put it now.
In terms of, can I thank Councillor Lowe for his response? However, could I ask him whether he could double check the information that he's been provided, because I have it on good authority from long-serving officers that parts of the pedestrianised areas actually are the responsibility of Rugby Borough Council. I'm happy to take a further written response from him once it's been checked.
Would you like to answer now, Councillor Lowe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy to investigate that matter on Councillor Sanderson's behalf, but I did query the very same point myself before the meeting, and was assured by our officers that highways maintenance, as the answer suggests, is entirely the responsibility of Warwickshire County Council. But I am very happy to check that again.
Thank you very much. We move on to question B. That's now up on the screen. Give a moment just for you to read it and the answer. Councillor Sanderson, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Would the leader consider a small working group to both listen to and consult with bereaved relatives on the most appropriate form of remembrance memorial, rather than this be a top-down exercise?
May I respond, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Lowe, please do.
Thank you. So thank you, Councillor Sanderson, for your question. As I said in my response, I'm sure we're all in total agreement that it's entirely right and proper that we commemorate the people who've been affected by this dreadful tragedy. As and when the time comes that we consider ourselves to be free from this tragedy, the people that we really need to be asking are our communities and the people, to see what they think would be the most appropriate response. And I'm very happy to work with any councillor in terms of getting to the bottom of what they feel the most appropriate response would be.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. We move on to question C. It's now up on your screen, just to remind you of what it says and for you to read. And Councillor Douglas, you have a supplementary question.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Yes, please. Thank the portfolio holder for the response. Does the portfolio holder acknowledge that it is alarming to see a rise in graffiti, and although the indicative figure for cleaning is relatively small, it could cost the council more in the long run as incidents increase? Therefore, I reiterate my calls for a task group to look into the matter, and in light of the portfolio holder's response to my question on the 23rd of February, when does he plan to set this up? Thank you.
you wish to
Thank you,
reply now,
Councillor
Councillor
Douglas. I thank you for your question. It's a very good question. We need to get to the bottom of why people feel the need to graffiti on our public realm. It's not a simple issue, and it will need a lot of very clever people to work it out. I'm happy to talk to you about how we can move this forward. It seems to be very similar to the littering problem, but I'm sure there are solutions to it. In a more light-hearted way, we only need one Banksy to pay off the council's debt, but I don't think we're going to get one any moment soon. So can we arrange a meeting with you after this meeting to talk about what we can do to solve the problem?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. I would welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. We move on in the agenda to item 6, to receive the report of officers. The next item is to receive the report of the Deputy Executive Director set out at item 6A of the agenda. The report concerns the Council's health and safety policy. Councillor Lowe, will you, as Leader of the Council, move the report of the Deputy Executive Director?
Mr. Mayor, I so move and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Who will second the motion?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do you wish to say anything now, Councillor Lowe?
I will say a few very brief words, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Just to introduce the report, it recommends a new health and safety policy for this council, and it goes without saying that health and safety is one of the most important issues that we could possibly be considering. In fact, I find it hard to believe there can be very many issues which are more important than health and safety. It is, as members will be aware, a legal requirement for us to have a health and safety policy under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 and the Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations 1999. Such policies should be reviewed periodically or following any significant change, and as such, the Council's policy has recently undergone an extremely thorough review. The policy which is before us tonight is the result of significant work by numerous officers, and for that I thank them, following improvements to the health and safety management arrangements which the Council has in place. And should members join me in voting to adopt the policy, further work will be undertaken to disseminate this amongst staff to ensure that the management of health and safety remains a priority in all Council services.
Thank you. Councillor Mahoney, I see you have your hand up. Do you wish to speak?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. First of all, I welcome the health and safety policy that's been put forward to us tonight. And I noticed that there's a new form of governance and scrutiny put in place. I'd like to make a friendly suggestion that in light of the adoption of a health and safety committee, which we've brought in the past, had under the members working party, that the members working party is now a duplication of what's been proposed. So can I suggest that the members working party be abolished and a standing scrutiny item on health and safety be put under the scrutiny regime, bearing in mind that members have no responsibility for health and safety of the borough. That falls completely under the remit of the executive director.
Do you wish to answer that question now, Councillor Lowe?
I'm happy to respond, Mr. Mayor, if there are no further questions from anybody.
There aren't any other hands up that I can see.
Fine. Well, in that case, Mr. Mayor, just in response to Councillor Mahoney's comments, first of all, I'd like to thank him for getting involved in the discussion. As I'm sure all members are aware, Councillor Mahoney is himself an experienced health and safety professional, and therefore his input on any health and safety matter before us is always most welcome. In terms of his suggestion, I would need to have a look at the precise remit of the group that he refers to see whether that is feasible, but certainly on the face of it, what he suggests seems sensible. And yes, thank you very much for your comments.
I should perhaps have asked the seconder if she wanted to speak before asking you to speak.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Excellent. Jolly good. Thank you very much. In that case, we'll move to a vote. Those in favour, please show using the raise hand function.
That's 35 for, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Would you all lower your hands now, please? See, there's 2 hands still raised. Still 1 hand raised. Right, thank you. Those against, please show using the raise hand function.
There are no hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any abstentions?
No hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Claire. In that case, the motion is carried. Thank you, and we move on to the next item, which is item 7, notices of motion pursuant to Standing Order 11. In accordance with Council standing orders, I consider that the next motion, as set out at item 7A of the agenda, should be referred to Scrutiny Committee. The proposer and seconder only have the right to speak, and there will be no discussion on the motion. Councillor Sanderson, will you please move the motion, notice of which has been given under Standing Order 11?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Who will second the motion?
I will, Mr. Mayor, and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Sanderson, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's interesting to note that we're rediscovering rugby's history, much of which has sort of long been overdue, and certainly a report by the Heritage Task Group certainly identified things that we needed to do. However, at this point, I'll just concentrate on Andrew and Richard Bloxham. Unlike Matthew, who stayed at home and found the Tripontium collection, Andrew was appointed by the Admiralty, along with his brother Richard, to return the bodies of the King and Queen of Hawaii to their native land after they sadly passed away due to an epidemic of measles at the time. This is a very long and arduous journey, taking over 2 years, and Andrew is noticed to have identified as many as 22 new species on the voyage. And a large part of the items that he collected are now on display in the British Museum, which possibly offers the opportunity to have them displayed at the Rugby Art Gallery and Museum. On his return to England, after a number of posts in Leicestershire and Warwickshire, he settled as the rector of Harbour Magna Church until his death in 1878. During that time, he produced 3 noted works on roses, brambles, and fungi. And again, it would seem fitting to have the small garden by the Art Gallery and Museum, perhaps to get dedicated to Andrew for his work as a naturalist and botanist. There are excellent paintings, a portrait of Andrew and Richard by Sir Thomas Lawrence, his uncle, painted prior to the expedition in 1824, and a high quality painting of HMS Blonde painted in 1825 whilst on the expedition. I feel we really could make quite a good display of that within Raglan. For that reason, I would ask you to support the motion. I would also ask you to look at again, the scrutiny committee to look again at the recommendations of the Heritage Task Group. To my knowledge, only 3 other recommendations have actually been implemented. And I'm particularly concerned that we still haven't got a advisory committee of perhaps councillors and local historians set up to consider blue packs going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ruders, do you wish to speak?
Just a few words, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. And it's around the task and finish group for the town centre heritage is just one. But I think the broader point here is about the number of reports that councillors make and do and get involved in, and the recommendations. And I think we do need to find a much better way of how we monitor the recommendations for all these task and finish groups and actually see if they're implemented or not, so we can follow those. And I'll be raising that on the scrutiny committee when it arrives. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you both. The motion now stands referred to scrutiny committee, and we move on to item 8, correspondence. Is there any correspondence, Executive Director?
There is none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 9 of the agenda, common seal. I move that the common seal be affixed to the various orders, deed and documents referred to in the agenda. Who will second the motion?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Those in favour, please show using the raised hand function.
That's 34, Mr. Mayor.
34. Okay, thank you. Will you please all lower your hands? Thank you. Those against, please show using the raised hand function.
There are no hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any abstentions?
Again, no hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. In that case, the motion is carried. We move on to item 10, motion to exclude the public under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972. To consider the passing the following resolution. Under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of information defined in paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A of the Act. I so move. Who will second?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Those in favour, please show using the raised hand function.
That's unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. Thank you very much. In that case, the motion is carried. You can lower your hands. And that concludes the public part of the meeting. Mike, IT support, may I ask you to stop the live streaming, please, and to confirm when it has been stopped? Thank you.